The chandeliers of the Hawthorne Charity Gala glittered like frozen stars suspended above the sea of gowns and tuxedos. Laughter rippled through the room, polished, practiced, the kind that belonged to people who never had to worry about anything real. Elijah Carter took a slow breath as he stepped inside, letting the warmth of the music and chatter settle around him. Tonight was meant to be a celebration, a milestone before the biggest meeting of his career. He smoothed a hand over his suit, custom, tailored but understated, the kind that spoke of quiet success rather than a need for attention. As he made his way deeper into the ballroom, he felt eyes flick toward him, curious and assessing. He was used to that. Being one of the few black men in a room full of old money meant he drew attention no matter how impeccable his credentials were. Still, Elijah held his chin high. He had fought for his place in these rooms, and he wasn't about to shrink now. He reached for a flute of champagne from a passing tray just as a sharp voice cut through the music. "You there?" A woman's tone, entitled, irritated, as if she'd been inconvenienced by something beneath her. Elijah turned to see Michelle Hawthorne approaching, her white diamond-studded gown gleaming as brightly as the arrogance in her eyes. She didn't even glance at his face before thrusting her empty glass toward him. "Take this and bring me another," she ordered. "Something decent. This tastes cheap." For a moment Elijah was speechless, not from shock but from the wary familiarity of the moment. He'd lived this scene before. The assumption, the dismissal, the subtle sting of being reduced to nothing more than a servant in the eyes of someone too wealthy to consider another possibility. "I don't work here," he said, calm and measured. Michelle blinked, then scoffed loudly. "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." She tossed her hair and leaned in as if daring him to disagree. "Just do your job." Elijah exhaled, turning to walk away. He refused to be baited. But before he could take a full step, he felt the sharp chill of wine pouring down his chest. Gasps burst around them, echoing off the ballroom walls as the red liquid trickled down his suit like a slow insult. Michelle smiled, satisfied, victorious, utterly unaware of the disaster she had just created. Elijah didn't need to raise his voice. His silence was enough to shift the room. Eyes widened, phones lifted, and as he met her gaze, calm and unshaken, the first crack appeared in her confidence. He walked away with dignity. She remained behind, still laughing, still oblivious, but the night was far from over, and neither realized how profoundly things had just changed. Morning light streamed through the glass walls of Hawthorne Enterprises headquarters, sharp and cold like the atmosphere waiting inside the boardroom. Elijah Carter walked through the lobby with steady steps, every movement deliberate. His suit was crisp, dark, untouched by the humiliation of the night before. If anything, he looked even more composed, as if he had already decided that the gala incident would not stain him but instead sharpen him. Receptionists greeted him with polite smiles, but behind their professionalism lingered recognition. The video from the gala had spread faster than wildfire. Even those who hadn't witnessed the moment now knew exactly who he was, and exactly what had been done to him. Elijah ignored the whispers. He had a contract to finalize, a $2.4 billion deal that could reshape the future of his company. This morning was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era, not the aftermath of someone else's entitlement. When he pushed open the boardroom door, the tension hit him immediately. Gregory Hawthorne stood at the head of the long table, his usual air of unshakable confidence cracked. Michelle sat beside him, pale and stiff, her fingers twisting her pearl bracelet anxiously. The moment their eyes met, she froze, not with arrogance this time, but with raw fear. "Elijah," Gregory said, clearing his throat as the rest of the board members fell silent. "We're glad you could make it." Michelle whispered something under her breath, but Elijah didn't acknowledge her. He simply took his seat, setting his folder on the table. "Before we begin," one board member said, folding her hands carefully, "we feel it's necessary to address the incident from last night's event." Michelle stiffened, her face tightening like a drawn bowstring. Gregory forced a smile. "It was a misunderstanding." Elijah lifted his eyes. "No, it wasn't." Silence swallowed the room. A few board members exchanged glances, uncomfortable, wary. The viral video had made its way to every corner of the internet by morning. Hawthorne Enterprises stock had already dipped. Investors were asking questions. Reporters were loitering outside the building. Elijah opened the contract folder, but he didn't hand it over. Instead, he leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. "I came here prepared to move forward," he said slowly, "but your company's values matter just as much as its numbers." Michelle swallowed hard. "I didn't know who you were," she whispered. "And that," Elijah replied, "is exactly why we're having this conversation." The room grew heavy. Gregory looked between his wife and the man he desperately needed to sign the contract. Tension wrapped itself around every breath, making the decision Elijah was about to make feel even more seismic. Everyone leaned in as he closed the folder, sealing the silence with it. The future of Hawthorne Enterprises balanced on the edge of his next sentence, and they all knew it. Word of the gala incident spread faster than anyone at Hawthorne Enterprises could contain it. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, the company's PR department was scrambling, investors were calling nonstop, and reporters camped outside like vultures waiting for a sign of death. Inside the Hawthorne home, the tension was suffocating. Gregory paced the marble floors while Michelle sat rigidly on the edge of the sofa, staring at her phone as notifications exploded across the screen. Her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. "It's not my fault," she muttered for the 100th time, though her voice trembled more now. "How was I supposed to know he was?" "Stop talking," Gregory snapped, dragging a hand through his graying hair. "Just stop. Every time you open your mouth, this gets worse." Michelle flinched. She had never seen her husband shaken like this. Gregory Hawthorne built his empire on control, of markets, of deals, of people. Now, for the first time, control was slipping through his fingers. And all because his wife had treated the wrong man like he was invisible. Across the city, the Hawthorne board gathered in an emergency session. Elijah's calm withdrawal from the deal had been like a crack in the dam. The moment he stepped out, everything began to break apart. Board members were furious, some at Michelle, some at Gregory, most at the damage to their own reputations. They reviewed the viral video in stony silence, the wine pouring, the insult, the sheer arrogance. "This is not just a PR issue," one board member said. "This is a structural failure in leadership." Another added, "Our competitors are using this to poach our investors. Our partners want statements. We have no leverage." The final blow came when Elijah submitted a formal statement documenting 3 previous incidents where Hawthorne staff had treated Carter Innovations' team with the same dismissive tone. Nothing as public as Michelle's humiliation, but enough to establish a clear pattern, enough to tip the scales. Pressure mounted until the board, panicked, embarrassed, and desperate, voted against continuing the partnership altogether, not because they wanted to, but because there was no longer any profitable way to salvage it. That same night, several shareholders filed petitions to reconsider Gregory's position as CEO. Michelle watched her husband's face fall as he read the board's decision. The downfall she had accidentally sparked was now unstoppable. What began as a single careless moment at a champagne-filled gala had grown into a storm powerful enough to threaten the entire Hawthorne legacy, and at the center of it all was Elijah, silent, steady, and unwilling to accept anything less than the respect he had always deserved. Elijah stood backstage at the Global Tech Summit, adjusting the last button on his suit jacket. The lights beyond the curtain were bright enough to silhouette the crowd, and he could hear the low rumble of thousands of voices blending into one restless wave. Today's announcement would reshape the tech landscape. More importantly, it would close the final chapter of the humiliation he had endured, not with anger, but with triumph. When the host called his name, the auditorium erupted. Elijah stepped onto the stage with steady steps, every heartbeat echoing with purpose. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned forward, and the world watched as he approached the podium. He paused, scanning the crowd, leaders, innovators, dreamers, people who believed in change. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice calm but resonant. "Today marks not only a milestone for Carter Innovations, but a commitment to the future we all deserve." Behind him, the screen lit up with the logo of Lysander Global, Hawthorne Enterprises' fiercest rival. Gasps rippled through the room. Elijah allowed a small, measured smile. "Carter Innovations is proud to announce a new partnership with Lysander Global," he said, "a project dedicated to ethical tech expansion and equitable global security solutions." The applause was deafening. He raised a hand gently, steadying the moment. "This partnership represents more than business. It represents respect, integrity, and the belief that the next generation of leadership must reflect the world we serve." Backstage, Michelle Hawthorne had been waiting. She wasn't invited, but she had shown up anyway, eyes red, mascara smudged, dressed in a plain black dress instead of her usual extravagant gowns. When Elijah exited the stage afterward, she stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Elijah, please," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice. "I'm begging you. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. We've lost everything. You've made your point." Elijah paused, studying her. She looked nothing like the woman who had laughed as wine spilled down his suit. She looked smaller, softer, finally facing the consequences of her arrogance. "I never wanted to destroy anything," he said quietly. "But I won't apologize for standing up for myself." Her breath hitched. "Is there anything I can do to fix this?" He shook his head gently. "This wasn't about fixing a contract. It was about fixing a mindset, and that work only you can do." Michelle's shoulders sagged. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She watched as Elijah walked past her, not in anger, but with the dignified grace she had tried so hard to strip from him. Outside, cameras flashed again as Elijah re-entered the lobby of the summit, surrounded by applause and praise. Reporters shouted questions, but his smile never wavered. The $3.1 billion partnership was already being hailed as historic. Meanwhile, news outlets everywhere reported the collapse of Hawthorne Enterprises. Gregory had stepped down under shareholder pressure. Their sponsors had fled. Their empire was unraveling strand by strand. But Elijah didn't celebrate their downfall. He celebrated the rise of something better. With the new partnership, he launched a foundation dedicated to supporting minority entrepreneurs in tech, ensuring that no one's brilliance would be overlooked because of prejudice or entitlement. As he left the summit, he felt lighter, free. What Michelle had meant to use as a stain on his dignity had become the spark that ignited his most meaningful victory, and the world would remember not the wine on his suit, but the power of his response.